Army of the Dead is a Zack Snyder zombie action movie released in May of 2011 directly onto Netflix and in some theaters. Well, not the worst movie I've seen this year. Looking at you, Mortal Kombat and Godzilla vs. Kong. This film is as soulless as the zombie hordes it depicts roaming the streets of Las Vegas. In this review, I will analyze this bland rehash of the genre in 5 sections. Action, the spine of any zombie film. Cinematography, the way in which the film is presented. Music/sound design, the emotional driver or catalyst of any film. Acting/casting, the charisma of any film. And finally, the writing, the heart and mind of any film. Before I begin, I would like to say that no film is perfect, and indeed the critique and analysis of such artistic endeavors is a subjective exercise. If you enjoyed Army of the Dead and disagree with some of the things I'm about to say here, that is alright. You are not wrong. We simply value different things in a movie, and that in itself is a good thing. If we all had the same taste, every movie might be the exact same. How boring would that be? I would also like to say that this movie did do some things right, and I will touch on those things. So if you're already angry, take a deep breath, relax, and hear me out. This is my critique of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. Action. When one sits down to watch a movie like Army of the Dead, you kinda know what you're in for. Heads exploding, limbs being torn asunder, lots of shooting, tons of blood, etc. Hell, the main reason why you're going to watch the damn thing is for this very reason. We enjoy seeing shit get fucked up, like slowing for a car wreck so you can see the damage, or binge watching the news coverage of some far-off disaster. This is the main appeal of a zombie movie, and it will always be, barring something like Shaun of the Dead, which aims to lambast the genre a bit with comedy. These movies aren't the Shawshank Redemption, nor are they trying to be. With that said, not all action is created equal, and sometimes it is more about the quality of the action rather than the quantity. Some of the greatest action movies have less action than you would think, or even remember, but the action they do feature is well earned and well played. You see, it's the connecting tissue between action sequences that make you care about the action itself. And a movie can only be so long, so by focusing too much on action and neglecting story and character, you undermine the power of the action itself, and end up with a heartless film. Have you ever watched a boxing or MMA match featuring 2 middling fighters you've never heard of? Well, either you haven't, because it's not interesting, or you have because it was on TV and it was either that or a rerun of The Big Bang Theory. Hell, even when the fighters are big names that will draw plenty of eyes on their own, the promotion is still savvy enough to lead into the match with humanizing segments that create a narrative around the fight. The promotion knows that drama is required for people to really invest themselves into this event. It doesn't really matter how good the fight is from a technical perspective, because there is no human context to view the match through. There is no soul. There is no underlying narrative that gives you a reason to care who wins and how. Army of the Dead is that boxing match between 2 mediocre pro boxers that no one has ever heard of. The boxers throw punches just like Pacquiao or Mayweather. They duck and jive. The fight is actually quite close and quite good on its own. Again, from a technical perspective. And there are people out there who will undoubtedly enjoy it for what it is. But it's not big time. It's not Ali vs. Frazier or Sugar Ray vs. Duran. Hell, it's not even Mayweather vs. Pacquiao. I say all this because the action was competent, even pretty damn good at times. And to a lot of people that will translate to this being a good action movie. Unfortunately, the meat has been cooked to near perfection, but not marinated or tenderized. It seems Chef Snyder always forgets to marinate his meat. Let's look at Die Hard, one of the greatest action movies of all time, and for good reason. Die Hard blends action, comedy, romance, and thrills with a near-perfect eye for storytelling. The action scenes are not blow-your-mind crazy. They aren't over-the-top ridiculous parodies of reality. It feels like it could happen. So if the action on its own is pretty run-of-the-mill, nothing to write home about, then why is Die Hard one of the most loved and respected action movies of all time? because the script is really damn good. Now, I know, I'm leaving action behind now and getting ahead of myself, so I better quit while I'm ahead, and just state that the action in Army of the Dead ranges from good to great. Directing action is one of Snyder's strong suits, and it really does show here. But because the connective tissues are necrotic and dead, it's forced to stand on its own and hold up the movie. An impossible burden. One category cannot entirely make up for the shortcomings of another. A good movie is well-rounded and succeeds in multiple, if not all, areas on some level. On the whole, I have to give the action a 7 out of 10. While certain sequences were quite engaging, and it is strong all around, it lacks the moments of epic badassery that I would expect from a Zack Snyder zombie movie. Total score for action, 7 out of 10. Cinematography. Cinematography is another area where this film is competent. It's obvious at this point that Snyder knows how to direct a movie. Snyder not only helmed this film as director, but also shaped the look of the movie as cinematographer, and I think the movie looks great. It's been shot by a professional, and the action sequences are really clear. I'm glad that Hollywood seems to have grown out of the shaky cam phase that dominated the better part of the 2000s. There isn't much else to say on this. It's a pretty straightforward way of presenting the movie that never gets in the way of what's happening. There are many shots that, like the action, exceed the rest of the film in quality. It was also impressive to see how seamlessly they blended Tig Notaro into the film following the firing of Chris D'Elia. Unlike Superman's pesky upper lip in Justice League, nothing here stands out as being altered in post. The visual effects team and Snyder himself deserve kudos for such a feat. It also bears mentioning here that the visual effects in general were quite good. The CG zombie tiger looked pretty damn good, and so did the makeup on the human-acted zombies, so well done on that front. Cinematography score, 7 out of 10. Music/sound design. Composer Tom Holkenborg, also known as Junkie XL, created the score for this film, and to me this is one of the most forgettable aspects of the movie. It's not terrible, but it's so bland that it may as well be the saltine cracker of scores. Holkenborg was the composer for Mad Max, Justice League, Batman v Superman, and Godzilla vs. Kong. There are a few scenes, including one on a rooftop near the end, where a more somber, emotional touch would have elevated the feel. But instead we got either nothing, or the same thriller-esque background tones that literally did nothing to convey the emotion of the moment. As I said before, it wasn't terrible, but terrible is a pretty low bar for a $70 million movie. Junkie XL must be friends with Snyder, otherwise I have a feeling Zack would work with more talented people. The sound design outside of the score was fine, it did the job, no complaints. Music/sound design, 5.5 out of 10. Acting/casting. The cast of Army of the Dead is one of the film's weaker points. Something is missing that cannot be overstated enough, and that is a true star. Someone who the audience really wants to root for. Someone that brings the charisma. Dave Batista is actually pretty good in the movie. I was pleased with his performance given the poor hand in writing he was dealt. But he is not a leading man. This falls squarely on the shoulders of casting, not on Batista. He got the job and did his best. Batista would have been a perfect sidekick, the muscle of the team. But as the team leader and star of the film, he doesn't fit. Now to be clear, I'm not simply talking about how famous an actor should be to lead a cast. I am more talking about what kind of charisma the actor brings to the movie. When Daniel Craig was cast as James Bond for Casino Royale, he was a relative unknown. It worked though because he was right for that role and brought the right amount of charisma. He brought the right kind of charisma to the character. This movie is lacking a leading man/woman that really brings charisma. Part of this is also due to writing, of course, but I feel like this movie was miscast. Shift Batista over to a role similar to Amari Hardwick's, and cast someone with more personality as the lead, and this movie is automatically a much better film. I hope Batista continues to get opportunities like this, and I think he did a good job all things considered. But it was a miscast that hurt the film. Everyone else was passable. The Zombie King Zeus, played by Richard Citrone, was really well acted, as well as the Alpha Queen Athena Paramble. They may not have had traditional lines, but they emoted in a perfect, animalistic manner that was unsettling to say the least. The rest of the cast is serviceable, though bland. Tig Notaro is probably the worst actor of the bunch, though she filmed her scenes after the fact and by herself, so maybe that is partially to blame. I haven't seen her in much else, and have a feeling she is just not a natural actor, something that can be said of most comedians who turn to acting, at least for the first few years of that transition. I'm glad they removed Chris D'Elia. I think he's an annoying creep, but one has to wonder if his performance wasn't better. I bet it was. Acting and casting, I give it a 6 out of 10. Writing. Writing. It all starts and ends with writing. A well-written script is what makes a good movie. Army of the Dead was written by Zack Snyder, Joby Harold, and Shay Hatton, and the story was conceived by Snyder. Let's start with the general premise of the story. This may feel like spoilers, but everything I say here should be obvious to anyone who's watched the trailer. If you're really worried about it, watch the movie and then come back. The premise of the film is that a convoy of military vehicles transporting some secret, unknown cargo from Area 51 crashes into a man who is getting road domed by a hot broad. The cargo then escapes confinement, and what do you know? It's a zombie. This zombie kills and turns the soldiers, and they descend onto the city of Las Vegas, quickly throwing the city into chaos. The military tries to fight the growing hordes to no avail, and erect a wall of shipping containers around the city to keep the zombies in. A few years later, the government decides it will just nuke the city, and so a rich casino owner guy commissions Dave Batista and his team to go in and extract $200 million from a safe, before the bomb is dropped and while the military are no longer monitoring the city. It's essentially Ocean's 11 meets Dawn of the Dead. Interesting premise, until you think about it for a second. Why did the government wait years to do this? I know it's been years because Batista's daughter literally says so. Kind of strange to wait years and do nothing. Furthermore, this little army of the dead that has taken over Vegas would have been wiped out by the military in a few days had they deployed all the toys that they have at their disposal. But instead, the audience is treated to a scene of a small squad of guys in a Humvee being overrun before an airstrike blows the shit out of everything. Now I know it's a movie. I realize that zombies have to be scarier in the movie and more capable than they would be in real life. Otherwise, the movie would be over after a 30-minute fight. But still, it is beyond laughable that a bunch of morons running around without shoes or weapons are too much for tanks and Black Hawk helicopters to handle. We never see sniper teams set up on roofs, we never see special ops extractions, or targeted airstrikes, beyond the one at the beginning. With the military resources that the US can bring to bear, this little charade would have been over with after a few days. You might say, well, you couldn't risk infection leaking out, so they just walled them in. You know what? That may be so. But then why wait years to drop a nuke? If you're really worried about containing the city, contain the city and drop a nuke. Don't wait years to do anything while these zombies sit around chilling. None of that passes the smell test, but let's continue. So Batista puts together a team to go in, and this team is goofy as fuck. We got a metrosexual, got a security guard, got a badass chick, of course. Batista's fucking useless daughter somehow talks her way into going, a silly German safecracker, and some bland soldier types. Poorly conceived, unoriginal characters to be sure. So the team goes in and of course everything goes to shit. The premise could be good with a few tweaks. I can see why Snyder went with this general route, but then comes the script, which is inept in almost every way. The heart of this movie is supposed to be the relationship between Batista and his daughter. You see, Batista killed the mom when she turned into a zombie near the start of the outbreak, and the daughter witnessed it. It's a pretty common trope at this point. And ever since then, the two haven't had much of a relationship. Trope or not, this is some shit a writer can work with. It's drama. It's a good hook to get you caring about these two characters, and how the relationship may or may not regrow from the ashes of tragedy. The problem is, the script glazes over this drama as if it's not the heart of the film at all, but just some side stuff to fill a little time before people start shooting zombies. There are two scenes that address this drama briefly before the action starts, and though they are done alright, it's just not enough to make the audience care. We get a scene of the mother's death, and then a scene in which the daughter is reunited with Batista and tells him she hates him for not comforting her after the loss. That's it. It's almost like Snyder knew he needed something to drive the emotion, but really didn't want to bother, so he tacked this on and said, "That's good enough, right?" Had the script drawn out the lead up more, spent more time on the characters and their relationships, by the time the action started, I would have actually cared about their fates. Cutting a few action scenes so that the action scenes that remain actually mean something would have been well worth it for the quality of the film, and saved the studio money in production. Writing, 4 out of 10. General overview. Imagine if during Die Hard, McClane killed hundreds of German terrorists instead of half a dozen. Explosions everywhere, a crazy sword fight with Hans at the end. The works. But in doing so, cut out the cop helping John from the street, and the drama with the ex-wife. Would it be a better movie? No. It would be the Fast and the Furious minus the cars. Maybe it would make more money in the box office, thanks to a generally stupid American public. But people wouldn't be talking about it 30 years later. Die Hard is a classic that will stand the test of time. Army of the Dead is one of hundreds, if not thousands, that we will collectively forget in a month. Total movie score, 59 out of 100.